This weekend was without Florida State football, but fear not, Noles fans. The next 5 weekends, 4 Saturdays and a Friday ahead, will feature some really big games. Welcome into Sunday Smash, presented by ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. He's Ira Schofel, the managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. Ira, I haven't seen you in a minute. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I like you. I think you're rocking the On3 hoodie.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Nice. There we go. I recognize those drawstrings anywhere. I'm good, man. It was a good weekend. Kim and I went over to St. Mark's, checked out the butterflies yesterday. That was a good time. It was a great weekend for no football. It would have been a great weekend for football, but it was also a great weekend for no football.
I took in a lot of football on a weekend with no Noles football. We're fans of the sport, Ira. This is not, you don't have to drag us kicking and screaming to cover the sport that we love here in college football. A lot of weird stuff happened yesterday. The 12:30 window on maybe an RSN near you was good viewing. As the Duke-Miami rivalry, it always pays off, Ira. That is one hell of a rivalry. Two coastal teams just going at it every year. Duke brings it when they play Miami. You got to throw the records out when the Blue Devils and the Hurricanes play. And Duke is piling on in such a way in the second half that whoever was playing quarterback, it could have been Ken Dorsey. Things are kind of falling apart early on in the Cristobal era as he's trying to figure out who's on his side and who isn't. That was fun viewing. And then before you blink, if you tuned in about 20 minutes late to that night window down in Columbia, South Carolina, it was 17-0. Yeah. And that was very interesting, too, for another coach that's near and dear to Florida State's heart. So, the Gators were off because they're playing Georgia next week and the world's largest cocktail party. I know it's not allowed anymore to say that. But it was good viewing yesterday, Ira. That 3:30 window was a little rough, but the beginning and the end of the day were good.
Yeah, it was a quality weekend for Schadenfreude. I'm just gonna go ahead and assume the Gators gave up 2 or 3 touchdowns anyway to the bye because that's how their defense has been. But yeah, man, Miami and Duke. I didn't, like I said, I was out during the afternoon, so I missed a good chunk of that game. But I went back and watched. Somebody posted on our on the Tribal Council. There's a YouTube video out there of the 8 turnovers, all 8 turnovers in one video. It's like a 5-minute video of Miami just falling apart. And those Jake Garcia interceptions, what's interesting about that is people may not remember, but Tyler Van Dyke probably wouldn't have played last year if Jake Garcia hadn't gotten hurt. Mm-hmm. Garcia was ahead of him on the depth chart. So then when Van Dyke got hurt, I was thinking, oh, no. And I think Garcia may have let him do a score. And I was like, oh, this might work out well for them. And then he turns it over 5 times. And in magnificent, like the last couple picks, the last pick, I think it's insane. I mean, you would think there would be an investigation into shaving points. He literally throws it right to the dude. And it was the Hurricanes are struggling. I watched Mario's I watched a lot of press conferences, as I like to do, Tom. I watched Mario's press conference. I watched Jimbo's press conference, which was quality. I watched Dino Babers' press conference was really short for a guy who took Clemson to the wire. But a lot of losing press conferences yesterday.
It kind of blew it. And that's, Dabo had said the week prior after beating us here in Tallahassee that, it's really embarrassing that people they point to DJ and he's the starter for this club. And, it's just they always want him to not be a part of this group and not be out there on the field. And it's embarrassing, honestly. Oh, yeah. So you lasted 2 halves and 2 quarters and 2 drives before you pulled the same guy that you're saying it's embarrassing that there's even a discussion about who's the starting quarterback. Interesting scenario there, but Clemson.
Where was that DJ 7 days earlier, Tom?
Oh, man,
because that was the whole reason I thought Florida State had a chance to win that game, a decent chance to win that game at home, was because I thought we might get that DJ. Instead, he can't make a mistake in Doak Campbell Stadium, but let him go back home against Syracuse, and he's just putting the ball on the floor left and right.
Yeah, that was a really strange game, too, the way they called it, because even before DJ was making mistakes, it was run, and then if you're in trouble, you throw. Not putting him in the best position, but the fumble going in for a score is a 14-point swing, and that's why that game was the way it was, and Syracuse was competitive for as long as they were. It was a bit of an eye-opener, though, Ira. It was smoke and mirrors with the final score a little bit. I think, Clemson, between the 20s, did better, but Syracuse took advantage of situations. 4 turnovers, for crying out loud. But, as you're looking at this 5-game stretch, Syracuse is going to make you earn it, at least. They're going to be straight ahead about everything that they do. So I circled that, and I said, all right, you can't go up there and miss layups in the red zone, or else you're going to be in a dogfight. But the game that's coming up this weekend And I see a lot of these comments. They're hilarious, guys.
I love Jeremy's line about Miami basketball. That was pretty funny. Miami's
Lester,
basketball had less turnovers against Duke the last time they played.
I think it was the same amount of turnovers that false starts A&M had last night. I think A&M had 8 false starts. That's a well-coached bunch. A lot of good well-coached teams around the country right now.
That's why I got a couple texts last night from friends asking if Rick Trickett was coaching the O line again for Jimbo at Texas A&M. And it was for a weekend where Florida State didn't play. That was a pretty fun Saturday for Florida State fans.
It was, and the weather was gorgeous up here, I'm sure, in most of the country, wherever you all are. And thanks for joining us here on Warchant TV as we rev up the machine again for another week of FSU football. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to Warchant TV. It's absolutely free. The weather was just delightful throughout the Southeast this weekend. So I hope everybody out there, you got a chance to watch on your back decks or an outdoor patio or whatever it was, because it's going to be a little bit warmer as we approach Georgia Tech's kickoff this week. That is a noon kick for Florida State and the Yellow Jackets. And I believe the opening line, Ira, was around 18 to 20 points, depending upon where you could get it.
Last I saw it was 20.5. So, wow. And we had talked about it last week on headlines. We wondered if it would be maybe double digits. I didn't expect it to be 20.5. It is a weird game, though, and I'm not trying to build it up into anything it's not. But, that team with Jeff Sims, they're like, you have to pay attention to beat them. Right. Without Jeff Sims, which is what happened in that game against Virginia, he goes out late in the first quarter, and the backup goes in. And man, that they don't look like a college. They don't look like an FBS football team with the other kid playing quarterback.
I watched exactly 3 plays of that Thursday night game. I couldn't do it. Between the NFL game that night and that college game, nope, I was watching baseball. And I love football, but, dear God. The thing about Georgia Tech, too, and we'll break it down as the week goes along, they're top 5 worst in the country in pressure rate allowed. Their offensive line, just plainly speaking, doesn't block it up, and they give up a ton of yards on the ground. So that's what I'm looking forward to this 5-game stretch. And we talked about this on warchant.com. Ira, you put together the roundtable questions. You can find that on warchant.com. I was part of the offensive side of it. Now that you've been as physical as you were against that Clemson front, it's time to not mess around moving forward, Ira. That's got to be the identity. Jordan Travis is electric both as a runner and now as a passer. That's what the first half of the season has proven to Florida State fans and to Jordan himself and the offense. But this has got to be about the run now for the next 5 games. You got to ram it down people's throats and be physical, right?
Yeah, and especially, I think when you look at Georgia Tech and Syracuse, I definitely think so. Syracuse, like you said, they're a solid football team, but I don't know if they'll be any different when Florida State plays them, but they're a little undersized on the defensive front right now. They maybe get some guys back, but we saw what we saw, you would think Florida State will be able to run the ball really effectively. One more thing, man, but I know you want to talk football and you want to talk Florida State. I got to make fun of one more thing about that Thursday game. Did you see the replay of the last play at least? The Georgia Tech kid?
Oh, yeah, he's out of bounds. It lived to play the next play.
My guy starts – first of all, he had sacked himself the Georgia Tech's backup quarterback, if you didn't watch it, he sacked himself twice. Now, he got sacked 7 or 8 times. Legitimately, 4 or 5 of them. 2 times, he just fell down. Like, he panicked. He saw the rush pretty quickly. He hadn't played in a football game, I guess, since he was at Akron. And Virginia's defensive front was probably better than some of the MAC defensive fronts he saw. Yeah. And, man, he literally kind of just tried to elude pressure and just crumbled 2 different times. The last play, he starts rolling to his left. And I'm thinking to myself, it's the last play of the game. You got to go 70 yards. He's rolling to his left, and all I can think of, where's he going to throw this ball? Like, there's no way he could throw it more than like 20 or 30 yards rolling to his left anyway. Yeah. And he just runs out of bounds. And then his interview in the post-game press conference, he said, yeah, I know that was a bad look. I probably shouldn't have just run out of bounds. It's like, should have given us a chance. It's not a bad look, man. Your team's only prayer was you just throwing the ball up for hope something would happen. You just cannot run out of bounds. It was unbelievable. So that really started, to me, which was just a wonderful weekend of making fun of other college football teams.
He should have just kept the trot going, Ira, taken his helmet off, put on a baseball cap as he's trotting into the tunnel with one finger to the sky, pointing to the sky as he trotted on in, and he keeps going. He finds a bus.
going back to Akron. He's actually originally from out like near Atlanta, so he's a local kid. Comes back home from Akron, And oh wow.
I'll be honest though, this is one of the irrational things in all of sports for me is Florida State has been way better than Georgia Tech a lot over the last 15 years, Ira. And for some reason it's a game, or for worse reasons it could be a loss. What a time to be alive. Remember that call in 2015 with the blocked field goal, which it was also, there was a false start or a delay a game before they tried the kick. I mean, what a disaster that was. So Matt Millar, our friend and colleague, used to be in the media here, felt that way about Florida State baseball and Jacksonville. Anytime the Noles play Jacksonville, he's a defeatist. I get more nervous than I should for Georgia Tech because I was there for Marcus Sims, and I was there the night that they didn't punt but one time and they lost the football game with the weather delay. And then 2015, Paul Johnson's crew didn't beat another ACC team that year, Ira, and Florida State's only other loss was to Clemson.
That snapped the win streak, didn't it? It snapped the 29 game or whatever win streak.
Yeah, it sure did. And Everett Golson misses an obvious zone read where he could trot into the end zone. I mean, what a night that was. So when we hit 000 this week on Zaxby's Warchant game day next Saturday, and as long as Florida State's ahead on the scoreboard, I'm going to be more happy. People are going to say, Tom, why are you so enthusiastic about this? Georgia Tech's just got weird juju about them, Ira, so I'll be a little spooked this week.
Yeah, it's again, like, you give them a little credit. They showed some life the last couple of weeks with an interim head coach. And they have a win over Pitt, although that win over Pitt does not look as good quite right at this point because Pitt has been awful this year. It's really weird. Corey and I were texting about, when Aslan and I were texting about it last night, how Pitt, I mean, we knew Kenny Pickett was a nice player and Addison was a really nice player, but man, they have just gone off of a cliff this season. So that loss, Georgia Tech doesn't look quite as bad. If Jeff Sims plays, man, they've got a chance. He can run around and make some plays. But you would think Florida State, like you said, the confidence they should have in that running game should be something they really can lean on and lean into in these next couple of games, especially coming off of a bye week.
Jeremy, we highlighted your comment about Miami and Duke and basketball and the turnover count relative from one sport to the next, but also your contribution to the show. Thank you very much. He's pushing for the documentary series, the docu-series of Ira and Corey. You got to be in the same car if you're going to have this docu-series. It couldn't be a Zoom. I don't think that's the schedule for travel. Do I have that right for the Miami game?
That's the problem, man. In the old days, we used to have a lot of fun stories, usually involving me and Corey cursing each other out. On our road trips, but we don't travel as much together anymore. And I'm sure there's a good chance Corey will want to bring Stephanie with him down there, and maybe I'll be driving with the cruise. So we'll see. If we could, we will try to document it because, Corey and I in the same car for more than about 20, 25 minutes, heck, more than 5 minutes, there's a good chance we're going to end up screaming at each other. So if we do, we should make an effort to do it at some point.
I was there.
Thanks, Jeremy.
I was there for the Sean Powell game in Gainesville years ago, and we were in the same car. Okay. And that was the infamous rest stop gate. I think that was 2011, I want to say it was. But that was one of the all-time knockdown drag-outs. So, Jeremy, if we can make it happen, we will. I did confirm something else, folks, for those of you that tuned in this week on Warchant TV and on the radio in Tallahassee. The Corner Pocket has agreed, Ira, that if Florida State does go 5-0 in their final 5 games here, that they will facilitate dual keg stands with you standing in the middle with a beer funnel.
Sweet.
On Rivalry Saturday, the day after FSU in Florida, before the noon kicks on the outdoor deck at the CP. They will be prepared for us if Florida State goes 5-0. So I hope you meant it when Jeff asked you, would you come out? Yeah, okay, because it's
all for it. I'm just not doing a keg stand. But yeah, so for people that didn't listen to the JCS this week, it'll be Jeff doing a keg stand on one side, Tom doing a keg stand on the other, and I'll be funneling beers in the middle. If any of the other Warchant staff want to come in and do a funnel, we're not doing any shotguns. We're just doing funneling beers in the middle of the keg stands. Yeah. Come on down. But so they have to win all 5 to do that?
They got to win all 5. And Eric Angel gets to play a part in that too because he suggested it. So Pillar, Eric, we won't forget you get to do a keg stand separately. We're going to do the Warchant staff, and that'll be the headliner, pardon the pun there. But that's what this final stretch is all about. To get a little bit more serious for a moment, Ira, is I see a lot of people in the comments, and Director Ben is putting that up. But 4-1, 5-0. That seems to be the expectations. I don't think that's our creation or setting expectations from the media side of things. This is a doable portion of the schedule, and you're getting healthier. This is time to make it count. You're close enough to prime time. You weren't ready for prime time, but you're close enough that I would think the resume says and suggests that Florida State should win the vast majority of these games and then prove it with an 8-4 or a 9-3 finish to the regular season. Is that where your head is still at now that you had a few days and you've watched some college football outside of Tallahassee?
I think the reality is, you're playing two of your rivals, so it's hard to chalk up. Oh, those are definitely going to be wins. And really, according to the FPI numbers from ESPN, where they do the projections based on their metrics, their football. What is it called? Football power index. Their power index. They have Florida State is the likely favorite in 4 of the 5 games. The only one they don't have them is actually at Syracuse, but they have them as a favorite at Miami and against Florida at home. But we know those are rivalry games. So, I don't like to make a declarative statement that if you lost one of these rivalry games and you lost at Syracuse to a team you may be an underdog against, that's a disaster. The problem is it would be such a tough way to finish after you've lost these last 3 games, because it would mean you finish 7-5. If you only win 3 of these last 5, it means you finished 7-5 and you finished 3-5 in the last 8 games after a 4-0 start. So that would be tough for people to stomach. It would make people not feel very gratified, even if you end the year with a win against Florida. So, yes, it would be huge if they can win at least 4, maybe all 5 of these games, and they could do it. They certainly could do it if they play like they did. I feel like for big stretches of the first month of the season, or for stretches of the Clemson game. If you just take away those 2 minutes in the middle of that game, I think they can win all 5 of these games. I just hate to say it like an ultimatum if they don't win 4 of them, that it's, this huge problem, because, the problem is that NC State game. That's the game that really created a situation where they have to win 4 out of these last 5, because they should have won that NC State game. But yeah, man, it would do a lot for Mike Norvell if they could win 4 out of these last 5.
Yeah, I agree on all fronts. What's interesting is the sequencing, and we talked about this last week, is that you didn't intersperse your 4 wins across the 7 games. You front-loaded them, and then there are 3 straight losses. So you basically got a month of not feeling so great about yourself and missing some opportunities. Talking to a lot of Noles this week, because, again, it didn't have to be over by the stadium or on lockdown on a Saturday, Friday evening as well. Got to talk to a lot of Noles fans. There are qualified rumblings. And by qualified, I mean they throw out, look, I think we're going to finish strong, but if we don't, that kind of conversation is coming, Ira. And these games, they'll play out and the results will happen for a specific reason on a given game day. But if they go 3-2 down the stretch, there will be some discontent. They will be focusing on the NC State game more than we already kind of are looking back on it now. And people will be asking big questions saying, man, is this the guy that's going to take us where we need to go? I think those things quiet down, though, at 4-1. They certainly are completely gone at a 5-0 finish, especially because you can win these 2 games against your rivals down the stretch. So for me, I would think that in order of importance, it would be to win your 2 rivalry games. If you're going to slip up once, make it to Syracuse and not make it one of the other ones, because that might even be a bitter taste in fans' mouths. It's frustrating when you look at the season as it's played out so far, and the NC State game is just there for the taking and you don't finish the job. And that's going to color the conversation unless this is a really strong finish. But we get to see it finally this week. I'm already impatient about it. I want to see what this team does, because they've got that toughness to them, Ira. It's not a pipe dream. It looks like it's more likely than not.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're getting guys back healthy, and we think, there's a good chance Fabian Lovett will be back. If not for Syracuse, there's a good chance that'll be the case. But if not, at least maybe the last 4 games. If not against Georgia Tech, then at least the last 4 games. You may get Robert Scott healthier. Jared Verse might be healthier. You might get Winston Wright back for one of these or a few of these last 5 games. So there's a lot of positives from a health standpoint. Jared Jackson missed the last game. So there's a lot of guys that might be feeling better, and you might have the team that we saw in LSU. And, that LSU win obviously looks a whole lot better now the longer the season goes on. But, I think that, somebody made a comment in the chat that what about if you finish 4-2 of your last 6, including a bowl game? So in that scenario, you finish 3-2 in these 5, but you win your bowl game. If your last 2 games are a win over Florida and a win in a bowl game, and your 2 losses are at Miami and maybe a game somehow Van Dyke plays great, they play well, and you lose a close game. You don't play bad, you just come up short. And the other loss is at Syracuse. is that something you can kind of salvage? I don't know. That's probably of the scenarios where you go 3-2 in these last five. That's probably the least, because at least you end the season with a win against Florida. But yeah,
Yeah.
man, if you got to make up for that NC State game.
Yep.
So win 4 of these last 5, or maybe win all 5 of them, and they can do it. Yeah, for sure. Play clean football, play hard, and yeah, you definitely can win, and just not fall apart in crucial situations, which was the problem these last few games.
Yeah, it's almost like a credit report. In the first 4 games of the season, the credit is just going sky high. You're in the upper 7s, low 8s, and I see you, Z-Chan, 1 second. And then the next 3 games, the 2 don't really hurt you that are the outer edges, but that NC State one, now you're back around 690, 710. You got some work to do. It's not bad credit, but you got some work to do. You got to build that thing back up. You can feel it among the fans. They're saying, I think we're good enough. I think we've shown we're good enough. Now do what good teams do, or well-coached teams do, which is if you're better than somebody else, go take care of business. And they've proven that they can do that, Ira. The Boston College game is one piece of big-time evidence that they can clock in, be professional to a degree, take care of business, and clock out. That's what Saturday has to be about at noon, is that kind of an effort, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. It really does, especially because you have that trip to Miami 1 week later. And again, this is all kind of leading up to that Syracuse game. And I was not a huge believer in Syracuse, and I'm still not necessarily. I think if DJ hadn't played poorly, and especially down in the red zone, I think, and I'm with you. I think some of the play calling was strange too. That to me, you know, you need to be able to give Syracuse your best effort. So if you can not have to play 4 quarters this Saturday, if you can go down and take care of business against Miami and at least still be in good shape physically, you have a chance to go up there and win that game at Syracuse. If you're all beat up because you had to play 2 fourth quarter games, including one of them against your rival Miami, and then you have to go on the road a week later to go up to Syracuse, you just don't give yourself as good of a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I'd say, that's the legacy, and I'll get to Z-Chan in 1 second, Ben, so you can wipe them back up. But that's the thing that kind of pisses me off about the way the LSU game finished, is if you manage that game better down the stretch, Fabian Lovett's never in a position to be hurt. And I know nobody's trying to do that, but it's just that mattered. That mattered huge. I mean, that next stretch, especially the 3 back-to-back weeks against ranked opponents, you don't think Fabian makes a difference to at least win one of those games? That's where if you have a chance to shut the door, and then you take those guys out, you minimize risk for the other weeks ahead because you're not as deep as you want to be in a year or two.
Speaking of playing late in games, how about my man Brian Kelly? They're up, I don't know, 18 points, whatever it was, late against Ole Miss, and he still got Jaden Daniels in there running read options in the last few minutes. I mean, I guess maybe he just wants to make a statement, to kind of make up for maybe the losses earlier this season. But that was really weird, man. That offense without him, the way he's playing right now, I think would take a huge hit. It was weird, especially in a game like that where you're up, you've won the game, and you don't know, some dude from Ole Miss may decide, hey, I want to, send a message to this guy, and didn't happen. But that just seemed kind of strange.
It was a strange game too because Ole Miss couldn't be stopped on their first few possessions. 14-3, they're going down the field. Looks like it's going to be 21-3, and it's going to be a blowout going the other way. They get a stop, kick a field goal, force a field goal. LSU does, and then they go on a mammoth run between then and the way the game was over. That might be a shot towards Lane Kiffin too. He's got a reputation that if you could take a chance to run it up a little bit and continue to pound it. Lane Kiffin is atop that list of maybe top 3 or 5 coaches you do it against, and it's a top 10 win at home for LSU too. I think Brian Kelly was trying to prove something to the boosters. Z-Chan, thank you so much. He says, evening, guys. How bad did the Gators get beat by the Dogs on Saturday, and how many tackles for loss for Lovett on Saturday if he starts? The second question is interesting because I saw what you guys pointed out in the roundtable, Ira, but I think that it's all about how many points can Florida score on Georgia, because I don't think they're going to get many stops against the Bulldogs, Ira.
Florida's defense, if people haven't done this, go look at Florida's defensive statistics. And like, people can complain about, people can complain about it on 4. They complain about parts of this defense that have not lived up to expectations. Florida's defense is the worst in the country, at least going into this weekend. Maybe somebody surpassed them while they were on a bye week, but they're the worst in the country at third down defense. They literally just do not get off the field. They're terrible. I mean, they are so bad defensively. So yeah, you look at those weapons Georgia has offensively. I mean, if Georgia just cares at all, and we've seen this Georgia team will put a whipping on people. They don't sleepwalk usually when they have a chance, and so yeah, that game could be really ugly. As far as Fabian Levitt goes, yeah, I'll be curious to see if he does play. How productive now if the quarterback for Georgia, the backup quarterback plays for Georgia Tech, I mean, he might get 6-7 because that kid is not real thrilled about a pass rush. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much you could expect from him in his first game out.
Yeah, again, yeah, the production. It's not always about the stat book when you're playing the interior of the defensive line. Here's hoping because he's just so elusive. You don't say that too often about guys that are in the middle, but he's just so quick. I'm hoping that he has a really productive final 5 games here because if he does, then he's moving on to the next level. And Fabian's been a really important force here. Another guy who's been in the transfer portal, and that's the other thing too. I heard this week a lot of people speculating about what does Florida State need in the future. We might be able to talk about that in a little bit. But Ira, I did pull up the stats on third down defense. There's only one group in the country that's worse than the Florida Gators. That would be Colorado. Oof. Opponents are converting 52.6% of the time on third down against Florida for the season. That's in 97 third down attempts. 51.
That's not what you want.
No. That's 130th out of 131 teams in the country. The likes of Bowling Green and Charlotte, who just fired their coach, Northern Illinois, Georgia State, UConn, are all better than than the Florida Gators at getting off the field. It's just unbelievable. That's terrible.
Yeah, their defense is bad. Yeah, and then as far as and that's the thing when you look at these, it's part of what when you look at these last 5 games.
Yep.
That I mean, man, you could get right. You could get right in a lot of these games. Georgia Tech has been terrible, especially if they don't have Jeff Sims. They're not great with him, but they're not. I mean, if you watch that game, the announcers made it sound like the Heisman Trophy winner went out when Jeff Sims went out. I think they had 0 points, maybe a touchdown, but they might have had 0 points when he went out of the game. So it's not like they were lighting up with him. But Miami just seems like a dumpster fire right now. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad they're playing. The last interception Garcia had is a 3-man rush. The guy who puts the pressure on, or it might have been the last forced fumble. There's 2 Miami guys are double teaming him, and the Duke guy just runs right between them. Yep. And so you have these next 2 opponents who could not look worse right now. Florida's defense is terrible. You get them at home. Louisiana is Louisiana. So yeah, man, you have every reason to believe you could win and maybe should win 4 out of these last 5 games.
Yeah, and it's one of those deals where if I'm a fan and I see some of the sentiment here, and Ryan is usually an aggressive fan in the chat, and we love him for it. But don't apologize for having those expectations. Like, this is put up or shut up time. Come on now. You put in a lot of work to be in this position. And this is the payoff. This is the reward. Because, after watching what they did to Clemson, Ira, it wasn't, smoke and mirrors to go and run down their throats. It wasn't double reverses and Jordan Travis making miracles happen completely. He did it a couple of times, but it's outside zone. It's not even counter. It's not even misdirection. It's just straight up football. And so if you can do that against that front, and I don't think Clemson's that great when it comes to the coaching. They've got a lot more talent than these scores would indicate. They're not getting the most out of their players there, but they're still a hell of a lot better than this front, this offensive line on paper. If you're able to do that against Clemson, then there's no more excuses. You've got to be able to make that your identity for these next few games, and then you let the chips fall where they may, on the road at Syracuse. That's going to be the big one. As long as they don't fumble the ball and give it away, they should be in a position to be a run-first team. And, Ira, I got to tell you, if I had to choose between 2 types of offense to tune in for every week, the running game travels. It's physical. It creates I think it makes the defense tougher on the other sideline. It fires up everybody in a way that the passing game doesn't. If they can be about that, then this could be a really fun sequence. But they've also got to get better in situations and finishing drives. Here's hoping that message was also received, that in the red zone, if they want to run the football, they can run the football. I think that's probably the next test for them, is that when they get in situations, 3rd and 2, red zone, 3rd and goal from the 3, can you run the ball when everybody in the world knows that you are going to run the football? And can you convert in those situations? If Florida State can, then there's going to be a lot of smiles over the next month. I would like to see everybody, all parties involved, rewarded for all the hard work that they put in or the faith that the fans have had. If they can do that, this gets real fun in the month of November.
I wanted to point out Gator Kirk's question: how happy would Corey be if the projection of FSU in the tax layer Gator Bowl in Jacksonville comes true? Are people projecting Florida State and Texas A&M in that game? Aslan was joking about it. I'm not sure in our text. I wasn't sure if that's a legitimate projection or not. But hey, I don't know if Texas A&M is going to get to a bowl game. I
That
mean,
yes,
they may not go to a bowl game, and they're going to have to beat Auburn, or they're going to get smoked by Ole Miss. I think
yeah,
this week, even though it's at home. But yeah, man, he's was 3-4 right now.
yeah. They're at 3 wins, and so they've got Ole Miss, they've got Florida. So what a battle that is. Jimbo's offense against the Gator defense. That is the movable object versus the stoppable force. I can't wait to see that on Saturday, November 5th. That's Miami weekend. Then they travel to Auburn, which has a bit of a pulse now
Yeah.
versus 3-4 weeks ago. They host UMass, so they got that
So
win.
that's a win. They got 4 right there.
And then they play Brian Kelly's LSU Tigers in the rivalry game in the final week.
That's not going to go well for them. So I think they got to win. They got to win a couple of those other games.
Yeah.
And and did you see? And so Florida's 3-11 in their last 14 SEC games.
Yeah.
Man, this is the time, Mike Norvell. This is your time.
Yep.
Miami's down. Florida's down. This is your time. Take advantage of this, right?
Yes, that's the other thing where if I'm an FSU fan, I'm saying, look, the door is open, and if you don't take advantage of this next month, and let's say that you split against your rivals and one of them is Miami, right? And then you lose the Syracuse game. And so you go 3-2 down the stretch and Miami gets a couple of yeses, or, somebody else comes down and poaches a kid because he doesn't believe in the 7-5 season. And signing day is again a dour proceeding for us at Warchant TV. Then you look back at these missed opportunities and say, is that going to spell doom for this coaching staff? I don't want to be that guy the Chicken Little guy, but this is a critical sequence in what this program is going to become under Coach Norvell. And you've got to see better situational play out of the offense. You've got to see better secondary play across the board. I'm very interested this week in practice, Ira, to see who the reps go to, because on that shot play for Clemson, Akeem Dent gets pulled off the field as far as I can tell. Shaheem Brown's in at that moment. So who's at safety now? Is Azareye'h Thomas going to get some more run at corner? I know he's not perfect, but he's certainly athletically gifted. They've got some decisions to make. They're getting healthier, but they've also got to make some choices about who they want to ride with, because it was at this point last year, Ira, that the secondary really changed. They changed the course of the conversation about Adam Fuller, about the defense in general. By the end of the year, we liked that group, and we didn't like them very much in September. So if they're going to have that type of leap again in production, is it because there are different bodies on the field or because guys make the choice? That's one of the fun parts of this week of practice that we get to see.
Yeah, you'd like to hope that there's some fierce competition this week of practice. I mean, it's kind of already happened. Jardian Jones has started the last few games opposite, one of the corner spots. I think he's taken a spot across from Renardo Green. But then, they're still rotating in Duke Cooper. They're still rotating in. And then, Kevin Noles has not played particularly well. That game, his game against Clemson was rough. And so, you wonder, does Greedy Vance get some of those reps? And as you said, I mean, when we talked to Mike Norvell, I think on Wednesday, he was still kind of mad about the play where Akeem Dent gave up the long play, or in Adam Fuller, where it just made no sense. They had repped it. It was something they had worked on a lot in practice. It made no sense for him to come up so out of control and give up the deep ball like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. I mean, from what we've seen of this coaching staff, they are loyal to guys, and they will let guys play back into favor. But, to your point, I mean, there is a huge opportunity in front of this football team. You can last year when you started off the season 0-4, there really weren't enough opportunities probably to just erase that. There's nothing they could have really done in the last 7 or 8 games to erase the Jacksonville State loss.
Yep.
If you go 4-1 or 5-0, certainly 5-0, nobody remembers that NC State loss again. That's gone. You swept your rivals. You played Clemson to 6 points. You finished the season with 5 straight wins. You finished the year 9-3. All of that's gone. You have a chance here to erase all of the warts from early this season or from the middle of the season. Take advantage of it. I mean, and so when you think about like the 4th down calls, when you think about the red zone calls, when you think about some of those decisions, when to go for it, when to not go for it, man, these coaches have to get it right, because we've seen some examples where they didn't get it right and they've added up to some losses.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little less cute and a little less panic out of decision-making from the coaches, and then a little bit. Go ahead.
One thing I was going to say is because you pointed that in the roundtable talking about the red zone, and I could see your frustration coming through. If you want to let a little more out of that, because I do have like a little caveat, I think, in their defense, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I wrote the same thing twice, so I was wondering if you'd pick up on that as the editor of the staff.
I did edit a little bit, so you could have, yeah.
Yeah, I just said it looks like we want to trick our way at times into scoring. Whether it's a double reverse to Pittman, or a cutesy little quarterback sneak with a tight end, or a lot of these fade passes to somebody not named Johnny Wilson. I was glad to see that the fullback dive was back in the repertoire because it worked at LSU. Jordan Travis tried to ninja kick DJ Lundy.
Crazy.
I mean, what the hell is that? But they still scored. Lundy's got
props to DJ Lundy, man. That kid, he knew what the situation was, and he was not going to go down. He was doing everything he could. They might have stopped him, but he wasn't going to just go down after Jordan's leg whip.
So maybe that is a sign that they're going to get a little less fancy. I didn't really care that much about the toss pitch play from LSU. I mean, it's actually kind of an aggressive play and a physical play. They just obviously botched it. But, I mean, you've got now what appears to be a more physical group that's proven it against a good front. Jordan Travis is a nightmare, traditionally speaking, if you roll him out. I mean, if I'm a defensive coordinator and it's 4th and goal from the 2 and Jordan Travis is rolling out right, I'm praying. I mean, my hat is in my mouth and I'm going, oh, God, please, let this work out for us. And it just looks so damned difficult at times for this group. The flea flicker is fine, JB Knoll. That's around midfield. You can have fun and be loose. But when you get down to winning time in the red zone, I mean, one of the plays of the year, Ira, was the back, or not the back shoulder, but the back corner of the end zone fade to Johnny Wilson from Tate Rodemaker. That was on 3rd and goal because they kind of messed around the first couple of plays with a couple of tricks. If they don't make that play, maybe they kick it. Maybe they don't make it. I mean, these kinds of things down the stretch here, there are going to be at least 1 or 2 games where you've got to be really good in the red zone and not come away empty-handed. If Johnny Wilson is the call on a fade, he's got the wingspan of a soccer net, out for FSU soccer. Hit it in that range. He will catch the ball most times. It's just these kinds of things add up, and we saw it in the NC State game in the worst way. But I heard you said you have a caveat. So what is the caveat?
I do want to give them the rightly or wrongly. I mean, I think what it speaks to is not. I don't think it's a let me show how creative I can be. I think it's more. I don't necessarily believe in this offensive line, and I don't want to get when everybody in the stadium knows you're running it.
Yeah,
I don't want to get in a situation where we get stuffed, and now they know I'm throwing. Or that, I think he's thinking, all right, I'm going to take my chances on 1st down because they may be thinking I'm going to run it. But the problem is they haven't converted them. And so now your ass is really in the jackpot, Tom, because now what are you going to do? Now you're going to run it on 2nd down? Well, great. But, so that it becomes a much, if it works, great. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I don't think it's the motivation is trying to be, Doogie Howser quarterback or a play caller. I think it's more they don't necessarily believe that they can move a good defensive line in short quarters, which is understandable, especially against that Clemson defensive front. But I get your point, man. Give them a chance. Give them a chance. Because this other stuff isn't working either.
The other thing I'd say, and Ben, you could put that back up from Carroll, bring the Wildcat back with a smiley face emoji or a laughing emoji. Actually, I'm okay with the Wildcat, the way they run it. They did it with Jayshon Corbin last year. It's in the playbook. Wow. I think they've repped it a couple times in games this season. That's physical. That's going straight ahead. All that is changing the numbers, so you've got a maximum a number of blockers on a straight ahead run. I don't like it at the 30-yard line, but inside the 5, that's pretty physical. And last year when they couldn't block it up, Corbin was so great at getting small and moving the chains when they were beaten up front. But that changes the numbers in your favor. So I actually wouldn't be too terribly disappointed if they ran that. But we'll see. I mean, again, they're sending messages. The players are sending messages to the coaching staff with their play. Hopefully, when the next time they get in the red zone on Saturday against Georgia Tech, and then when the real tests come against Miami and Syracuse, that they live up to that. Eric, I see that, Trayshawn Ward, hopefully he'll be back for the Miami game. They got really good news on him relative to what it could have been. He was taking a photo in surgery garb, and that he doesn't need surgery, so that's great news. Director Matthew is here. Director Matthew is living his best life, and this is a great segue because the program is brought to you by ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. If you're enjoying something in the chat right now, go ahead and just raise a glass to us and tell us what you're enjoying. I've got some red wine, Ira, tonight, in honor of Duke's victory over Miami, I decided to open a bottle of wine.
Nice.
So I've got a little Chianti here, getting my Hannibal Lecter on. Are you enjoying and partaking tonight, or are you keeping it
Doing
light?
non-alcoholic tonight, buddy.
All
Non-alcoholic
right,
tonight.
that's
It's
fine.
had a couple nights this week that got a little sideways. So for me anyway, not crazy, but for me.
Yeah.
So I decided Sunday night maybe I need to chill out a little bit.
There you go. So, well, for ABC Fine Wine and Spirits enthusiasts out there, and you all are as you're heading towards Doak for game day or your own particular abode, they've got curbside pickup across the state at ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. So all you got to do is put the order in online, park in the designated spot, pop open your trunk, and you're moving along. Efficiency is the thing, baby. We want efficiency of the red zone. You want efficiency for your tailgates. Make sure to support ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. All right, yeah, I see it. Bush Light. There you go. I don't think that's how you spell it, Andrew, but yeah, he's getting Bush Light. Good job, guys. And thank you for responding to that. Cheers to all of you. Ben, if you've got some questions, feel free to put those up for the final 15 minutes or so here of Sunday Smash. I saw one earlier. I think it was from R. Wilmer. Forgive me if it's not. Might have been from Briley. But Malik Feaster. It's just Malik Feaster question mark. Tom, Ira, what you got? What would your answer be first? Because you've been to more practices than me, sir.
Yeah, I mean, they picked him up in camp they just wanted one more DB for depth, and he's okay. He's not. I don't think he's the answer at one of the cornerback spots. Again, I think he's played some special teams, but I don't think he's going to be the answer. I think, again, I think overall we feel pretty good about Renardo Green. And really, again, Jarian Jones stepped up, has not been sensational, but he also hasn't gotten beat a lot either.
Yeah.
He's been okay. But I think if Azaria Thomas, the reason you brought him up is he has some star potential. Like he's a guy that can make some plays. And that's the one thing that's really been lacking from this defense. I think on the one hand, you'd say, I think this defense has been put in some tough situations. On the flip side, they've only forced 8 turnovers, which is not good. They forced 4 fumbles and 4 interceptions. They haven't even been around a lot of the passes. Like they haven't even competed against a lot of these passes. That's something you want to see, and that's why you look to say, okay, well maybe Azaria Thomas can do that because you're not seeing it from some of these other guys.
Yeah, that's got to be something in the preparation. And look, I'm not one to always bash the coaches because the players. It's amazing how smart coaches look when they have really good players.
Right.
But last year they get credit for developing that defensive backfield, making some choices about who to play, where to play him. And you saw from game 5 to game 12, incredible improvement and development in that defensive backfield. And that's just a fact. And so that's kudos to Coach Woodson. It's kudos to Adam Fuller. But this year, on the flip side, they've regressed. I mean, it's fair to say it. They've regressed this year. They're not a group that you can count on. Omari Cooper was supposed to be your stalwart. He's your 3rd or 4th best corner. I mean, that's the problem here. Ira,
Briley's coming correct. In all fairness, their interception numbers couldn't be that great because they haven't got to play Miami yet.
Well, here's hoping they do that because that's what they did last year against Miami in the first half. That made a huge difference in that game. Van Dyke looked like his head was spinning in a year that he largely played well. The crowd made a difference, and the defense was imposing. They just haven't been imposing. They've had some good game plans, and they haven't been the reason Florida State has lost all of these games. In fact, in that 3-game losing stretch, I'd say it's on the offense probably twice, Ira, and on the defense maybe one time. But this is a group that they proved they could make a difference last year, and they haven't made a difference this year. So what gives? And that's got to be a big picture question at the end of the season, no matter what happens here. I mean, unless they turn the corner. But if I was ranking the guys I trust most in that defensive backfield, it actually gets pretty tough pretty quick because Renardo Green is a guy I trust for sure. I probably trust Jamie Robinson more than Renardo, but it's those two. And then after that, I don't know who the next guy is. Noles hasn't been playing that well either. So if you had to rank it in guys that it's 3rd and 7 and you need to get off the field, who do you trust? After Renardo and after Jamie, where do you go?
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody you trust. I mean, you just don't. They just haven't played well. I mean, I think I mentioned it last week. Amari Cooper, according to PFF, has been targeted 17 times this season and given up 15 completions, which is just crazy. And again, I don't live and die with the PFF grades, but they are a tool. And man, Kevin Knowles, Amari Cooper, Akeem Dent are just it's a bloodbath when you look at their PFF grades. I mean, they are just really really struggling. What were you going to say about Matthew and his Phillies?
Okay, so they won obviously today. They're going to the World Series, and Bryce Harper hit a 2-run home run. They were down 1 in the bottom of the 8th, so effectively that's almost like a walk-off home run. Although the bullpen made it interesting. When Mike Norvell was hired, did anyone ever think in the year of our Lord 2022 the Philadelphia Phillies would be in the World Series? Thank you for hijacking the show for a couple of minutes,
Yes.
Matthew. Make sure to hydrate. We've got a show tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Right.
It's 1 o'clock. Make sure you're there with bells on. Tom Ortner asks, Ira, what's your favorite strain? Oh man, no.
Well,
that's
go back to my younger days, but no, I'm not answering that question, Tom.
Oh no, Ira's about that. He's
Appreciate the
about that
contribution,
roundup
though.
life. Yeah, Ira's about that roundup life now. He's not about strains of anything. Thanks for the support, Tom Ortner. Any other questions that we have here, Ben? Feel free to wipe them up. But I guess if I was to say, Ira, what would be the reason Florida State goes 5-0 or 4-1 down the stretch? Would it be improved play from the secondary as the leading storyline, or would it be a continuation of what we've seen from the offensive line and the ground game coming to life and being something that Florida State can lean its hat on down the stretch? How would you predict it out?
I mean, those are obviously key factors, but to me, really the thing I want to see to make me feel good, especially going into next season. And and again, we don't know what Jordan Travis is going to do. But if Jordan Travis comes back next season, I would like to see him become a better quarterback in some of those key situations. And that's not all on him. It's on Mike Norvell and it's on Tony Tokars to help him become a better quarterback in those situations. And I just think, so to me, in at least a couple of these games, there's going to be these moments where you have to make a decision. You have to get what you need to get, whether it's 4th and short, and you just got to get the first down, or it's second and goal, and you need to decide whether or not to live for another play. Just those decisions, because to me, that's been one of the frustrating things about these losses has been they've had opportunities and they just haven't made great decisions in those moments. Now, I think Jordan's got, if you think about how much better Jordan has gotten from a year ago to where he is now, it's unbelievable. Now, if he takes that step, you literally could have one of the best, maybe the best quarterback, or one of the very few best quarterbacks in the country. So that's why I want to see. But yeah, you're right, man. If you run the ball with authority, if the secondary plays better, those will help. But that's what I want to see, because I believe it's in Jordan. I know he can do that. It just hasn't. I think they've been focusing on so many big picture issues. They haven't gotten down to those fine details. But if they can get those fine details, though, that to me is what makes me believe they could win all those 5 games.
Garrett S. asks, what do we need to see in practice this week? Now, this is interesting because I don't know that we've ever really talked about how we assess practice or if we're looking for something specific. Because some of it's cloak and dagger that we can't really discuss when they install things for opponents, like trick plays. We saw the flea flicker before it actually happened, before everybody's eyes in New Orleans. But what is it that you would want to see, Ira, down the stretch here, and certainly for this weekend's game against Georgia Tech?
Now, on the flip side of that, because again, I don't know that you can simulate sometimes some of those situations that I want to see from Jordan. So on the flip side, it's what you said. I think especially defensively in the defensive backfield, whether it's shaking things up, whether it's those guys getting enough film prep so they know what's going to come before it comes and they can attack passes. I was talking to the other day, Kes McCorvey was out of practice, and we were just shooting the crap, before practice or in the beginning of practice. And I was talking to him about how important it is to be smart as a football player, especially in 2022. And he was talking about when he got to the NFL, there were DBs he would talk to who would tell him, DBs on his own team, who would tell him, okay, look, when you stand like this and it's this down and distance, you're trying to get inside leverage or whatever it is, I know there's only 3 routes you could possibly be running. And if I see this, I know there's only 1 route you were possibly going to be running. So that part of it needs to come. To me, I don't know that they need to be at that level, but I think it seems like the only thing I could point to is either film preparation or coaches preparation. So the DBs have a better idea of what's coming. They can be more aggressive. And I'd like to see that in practice, not just breaking up passes in one-on-one, but also when they do 11 on 11, and also when they do working against the scout team defense, knowing what's going to come and attacking it and being aggressive, because they've got to get some plays out of that secondary.
Yeah, Garrett, I'd answer it this way: is I just like to see more healthy bodies in practice, and we can't necessarily report on all that. But if guys make plays in 11 on 11 situations or individuals, we're going to mention them, and you can find those on warchant.com with the observations. If you haven't become a member yet, now's the time. It's only $10 through August 31st of next year. So stop by warchant.com, get set up on those, because Tuesday and Wednesday we've got observations for you from practice, and you want to see what names are tagged in those particular observations. But Garrett, I want to see healthy bodies flying around the football field, and guys like Fabian Lovett taking part in more drills. I want to feel confident that you could see at any given point a defensive line that includes a healthy Jared Verse, Robert Cooper, Fabian Lovett, and maybe Patrick Payton or Derek McClendon. That is fearsome, and that will make the secondary by nature look better, and the linebackers look better because they'd be able to take over some games. Dwayne E. Miller asks, how is the kicking game looking, and how do you all think it plays in the last 5 games of the season? That's also part of play calling as well, too, Dwayne. It's because you have to guard against what you don't trust in the kicking game. I think that's influenced some decisions that they've made on second down and third down. I don't know that there's anything that Fitzgerald can do or the walk-on can do more than they have the last couple of weeks. They've made their kicks, short of one being blocked on Tuesday. They've done their job. So what do you think, Ira?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, and we've written about it, and people maybe have read it or not, but, Ryan Fitzgerald did change his approach from a 3-step approach to a 2-step approach before the season. It obviously did not go well. Those first 5-6 games, he was really struggling. He switched back, and it looks to me like he's kicking a lot better. You're seeing the ball coming off his foot sharper. Again, he's in practice. He's been much better in practice, because even in those losses or in those moments where he was struggling in games, he was also struggling in practice. Towards the end, he started getting better practice, but I think it's been consistently better. You'd like to think he's over that hump, and I agree with you. If he is over that hump, then that should change the calculus for Mike Norvell, where he doesn't feel like he's in a situation when he's at the 25-yard line or the 28 or the 30-yard line where he has to go for it. He at least has an option to kick the field goal.
Agreed. Thank you, Dwayne, for the question. Last couple here on Sunday Smash, presented by ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. Throw us a like, would you please, underneath this video on Warchant TV. Do we have anything, Ben, or are we moving along? Let's see. Up next on Warchant TV is, let's get to Carol's comment real quick here. Having Fabian back is huge along with Jared. Maybe that will spark the defense. Again, I like that sentiment, because the secondary will look better magically if you get more pressure on the passer and you win early downs. That's just by nature of last year, looking at Jermaine Johnson and Akir Thomas. You don't think that had something to do with Tyler Van Dyke's failures in the first half? That had everything to do with Tyler Van Dyke's failures in the first half. Fabian might not light up the actual score sheet. That's the one thing I want to caution people as he returns back to the fold here. Just because Fabian might only have a tackle and a half, maybe a half a tackle for loss in the game, doesn't mean that he had no impact. Defensive interior guys aren't the guys that rack up the stats, but they're the ones that affect everything about how a group blocks against a defensive front. So just having him back in there, trust us, even if he's not lighting it up with 3 sacks over the next 4 or 5 games, that doesn't mean Fabian's not critical. And honestly, Ira, if I had to rank, and maybe this is how we can close it, if I had to rank the most critical pieces to Florida State finishing with 4 or 5 wins down the stretch, of course, Jordan Travis is atop the list. The quarterback makes the biggest difference in most games. But I think Fabian Lovett is next in line. What he can do to change everything about how that defense plays is critical, and he's got to be available at least for 4 of these 5 games.
Yeah, and that's why I felt bad. I have felt bad about being too critical at times of the linebackers, because, look, we all understand, everybody, you don't have to be a football savant to know that if the defensive line, particularly defensive tackles, are not occupying the offensive line, not being disruptive, it makes life much more difficult for the linebackers. And so they have not been at full strength. Robert Cooper has not been at full strength. Fabian Lovett hasn't played in 5 games. Even some of the backups, Malcolm Ray's been hurt from here or there. Jared Jackson's been hurt from here or there. So they have not had that presence up front. And I think what you've seen because of that is I think you've seen Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach either guess at times or get confused at times because maybe the defensive linemen are not doing what they expect. So I don't want, that's why I'm trying not to be too critical of them, because I do recognize what's happened to that defensive front. But yeah, man, if you get those guys back, Jared Verse is a terror. I mean, he's an elite pass rusher when he's full speed. Now he's had a couple weeks to rest as well. And then, Fabian Lovett, he's probably your best defensive lineman. If Cooper's getting closer to full speed, I think McClendon has shown flashes. Patrick Payton's gotten better and better. Dennis Briggs is a guy you can still mix in there. Then you have got the Josh Farmers and Malcolm Rays and Jared Jacksons, and to mix in there, that's a formidable defensive front, and they just haven't had that for a big chunk of the season.
We'll promo what's coming up next on. I knew you were going to wipe this up, Ben. So Garrett asks, if we go 5-0, will Tom shave the goatee and rock the stash? I've got to ask the boss if I can do that. Talking about Gene Williams, I got to ask my wife Jamie, who will absolutely do a shotgun on the Warchant postgame show if we go 5-0. She's the expert in this house at that as well. Yeah, Grizzle, it does. It didn't do Spencer Strider all that much in the playoffs in the MLB, but the stash is trending. It's making a comeback. Doesn't Shipley have one now too for Clemson?
Yeah, I think so.
Shipley's rocking it. Yeah, it's like 1987 all over again here. Did you ever have a mustache, Ira?
No, man, I went straight to goatee. And this is a little known fact. Well, we got a second here. The reason I started wearing a goatee, honestly, was the early 90s Knicks teams. I loved those teams, and those guys all had them. Oakley and X McDaniel, and I think Charlie might have had one. And I mean, just that group in the mid 90s. That's when I started wearing a goatee, and now my dog's barking.
There you go. No mustache.
I never did the straight mustache.
No mustache for you if they go 5-0 down the stretch?
Hell no.
That's a hell no. It's a hard no.
Nope.
Garrett, I'll work on it. That'll be my word to you. I promise you, I will try. And if it happens, then I think everybody's going to be so caught up in the moment that people will do a lot of weird things, like keg stands at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill on Rivalry Saturday. Coming up on Warchant TV and Warchant.com in the next few days, and in fact, in the next few hours, Wake Up Warchant will be available late tonight, early tomorrow morning. Corey and Aslan will get the machine revved up like we have for this stretch run. It's a critical time for Florida State, so they'll be breaking down their thoughts after the bye week, maybe remarking on a couple of the football games like we have. Tomorrow, the press conferences resume. Mike Norvell meets with the media at 11:30, the coordinators shortly thereafter, so we will have content on that. And then we've got a live show at 1 o'clock, Jeff Cameron and myself with the Jeff Cameron Show. But there's other stuff coming in between. Good stuff on the site in terms of writings and features. Ira, why don't you fill us in on what's going on right now in the next day or two?
Yeah, I'm actually going to post a story tonight. Somebody was asking in the chat actually to ask us to rank these last 5 games in terms of most difficult to least difficult. And I actually have a story doing that that'll be coming up on the site later tonight. Corey's got a column that'll be going up in the website in the morning. And then we, as you said, we cover the press conferences tomorrow, then practice on Tuesday and Wednesday. Men's basketball has an exhibition game Thursday night.
Wow.
And I just wrote a story about Naheem McLeod, the big 7'4" center that you can still find on the website as well. And baseball had their exhibition. We'll have more baseball coverage coming this week as well. So it's that time of year where football, but we start sprinkling in basketball as well.
So that is it for us on Sunday Smash here, presented by ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. He's Irish Raffel. My name is Tom Lang. To all of you out there, cheers. Enjoy whatever it is that you're drinking on. And Tom, I hope you have enough lighter fluid for whatever it is you're doing tonight in your humble abode. Ira's got one more thing. I see it. What is it?
Gator Kirk is drinking more than Matthew is. No effing way. Not ever happening. It's going to go on its own, Gator Kirk. I'm not helping it along the way. I'm going to hang on to every last strand, buddy.
Yeah, there's a guy named Kayvon who's always in the chat saying complete the trilogy. And I think he finally gave up. But Gator Kirk has not given up yet for the Headlines trilogy of baldness. Ira, I think you at least got 7 to 10 more years in that. You got it. You're fine.
We'll see. I'm not looking ahead. I'm one day at a time, 1 week at a time with this hair, because it's gone a lot quicker than anybody ever expected.
It'll be 1 week at a time for Florida State, and practice begins again in earnest. We will report it for you on Tuesday. We've got a lot of great content on Warchant TV and Warchant.com between now and then. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to Eric. I see the keg stands. Thumbs up. Our keg stands in Florida State's future. We will see. 5-0 finish would do it. This is Sunday Smash. You're listening to and watching Warchant TV. We will talk to you right here next time. Hit the like button and subscribe to us if you haven't on the way out. Thanks, everybody, and good night.